Good morning, children. Sairam. I again welcome you all to the online class of economics. Children, today I'm going to start the next chapter of our book, Indian Economic Development. That is chapter number 7, and the name of our chapter is Poverty. Children, this is the first video of this chapter, and in this video, we are going to learn some of the most important topics of this chapter. Like, we are going to learn first what is poverty and who are poor, what is poverty line, trend of poverty in India, that is the number and the percentage of the poor, the causes of poverty, measures to remove the poverty, and at very last we are going to learn the measures adopted by the government to remove poverty, that is poverty alleviation program. Children, one thing I want to again remind you, like from this chapter, from chapter number 7 to chapter number 12, your seventh unit will start, and which is the current challenges facing Indian economy, and it contains a weightage of 22 marks in the board examination. And in this unit, the seventh unit, you are going to learn poverty, that is in chapter number 7, then chapter number 8, that is rural development, human capital formation, thereafter then employment, infrastructure, and last we are going to learn the sustainable economic development. So up to like chapter number 7 to 22, this particular unit contains a weightage of 22 marks in the board examination. So children, let us start with the first topic, that is introduction of poverty and poor. Children, as you all know, in the previous chapter we have studied the economic policies which is pursued by India after the independence, which is known as the new economic policies, and with relations to the various development indicators. So providing the minimum basic needs to the people and reduction of the poverty has been the major aim of independent India. As we all know, India was considered as a poor country, and more than 50% of the country's population was living below the poverty line in the ancient times. So the 5-year plans which have been started have always stressed on upliftment of the poor people and achieving a minimum standard of life for all. However, the poverty is still one of the most serious problem from which the country is suffering. So poverty is a challenge not only for the India but also for the entire world, as more than one fifth, that is one fifth of world poor, that is one fifth of the world poor, that is almost around you can say that 270 millions people live in India alone, and are not able to meet their basic amenities of life. So with this introduction, you are going to understand that the poverty has widely spread in our country, and in the current last population census, like in the year 2010 to 2011, the country's population, that is one third, I mean, 21.9% of country's population was living below the poverty line. I mean, they are considered as the absolute poor. They are not able to fulfill their basic amenities of life. So, children, what is poverty and who are poor? Children, poverty refers to a state in which an individual is unable to fulfill even the basic amenities of life. The minimum or the basic amenities of life include the food, clothing, housing, education, and the health facilities in a country where a big mass of the population is deprived of even minimum amenities for a very long period. Then such a country suffers from a vicious circle of poverty. So poverty basically considered as the inability of fulfilling the basic requirements of the life. The minimum requirements include the food, clothing, housing, education, health, facilities. So children, if this minimum needs are not fulfilled, then man undergoes pain and suffering. So this causes a loss of health inefficiency and sickness and disabilities render him helpless in all walks of the life. So we can say that generation after generation will live in the poverty, and it grows in the poverty and dies in the poverty itself. So poverty breeds on multiplies itself. Now the next thing is, who are poor? Children, as I just explained you that poverty is a great curse on humanity. A poor person live a wretched life as he is unable to enjoy a barest necessities of life, which make him morally degraded. So he cannot conduct himself as a human being. So the treatment that he gets from the society demoralizing him, and poverty is a harsh reality for a large section of Indian population. So poverty in India has been studied from the two basic points, like poor, that is urban poor or the rural poor. So now I'm again coming back to the point, poverty and children. The poverty can be classified into the two broad categories. The first one is relative poverty, and the second is the absolute poverty. Now, what is relative poverty and the absolute poverty? Now, first we'll talking about the relative poverty. Children, relative poverty refers to the poverty of a people in comparisons to the other people, regions, or nations. For example, suppose if Ram has lower income in comparison to Sham, then we can say that Ram is relatively poor. So it helps in understanding the relative position of different segments of the population, and it only reflects the relative position of different segments of the population in the income hierarchy. It does not consider how poor the poor person is, or whether he is deprived of the basic minimum requirements of life or not. So poverty refers to the poverty across the different class regions of the country. The country or the class of the people whose level of income or the level of living is low is treated as poor or relative poor in comparisons to the country or the class of the people having the high level of income or living. So you can say that the relative poverty is also interpreted in terms of the inequalities of the income within the country. For example, in India, the share in the national income of 20% of the people at the bottom is barely 8.1%, while that of 20% of the people at the top is 45.3%. I mean, the contributions to the country's national income of the least earning income holders are only 20%, but that is only 8.1%, and while that for the 20% of the people at the bottom is 45.3%. So you can see that the richest earners of the country has contributing to the national's income, that is 45.3%, and their numbers are only 20% of the country's population. So this is considered as the relative poverty. Now we are moving on to the next one, that is absolute poverty. Now what you understand by the absolute poverty, children? Absolute poverty refers to the total number of people living below the poverty line. So according to the absolute measures, around 22% of the India's population is living below the poverty line. So you can take this percentage as a serious trend, that almost the country's populations 22% of the country's population was living below the poverty line. So, I mean, they are very poor and they cannot fulfill the basic amenities of life. So, the concept of the absolute poverty is relevant for the less developed countries like India, where there is abundance of the poverty, and it helps to measure the the number of poor people. So, what is the poverty, absolute poverty, children, in India? Again, I'm saying the concept of poverty line is used as a measure of the absolute poverty. Poverty line basically refers to the minimum cutoff line in terms of the per capita expenditure that divides the people of a particular regions as a poor or non-poor. So in India, persons who spend 816 rupees on consumption in the rural areas and 1000 rupees in the urban areas per month are treated as those below the poverty line. So, based on the new official poverty line in 2011 to 12, the poverty rate in India is estimated to be 21.9%. So, you just see that how critical condition is alarming in India. So, in terms of the total number of absolute poor children, as I just said, 21.9%, that is almost 22% in India, covers over 50% of absolute poor in the world. I mean, if suppose there are 100 poor people who are living in a world, who are from the entire world. I mean, the number of absolute poor supposes 100 from the entire world, and out of this 100 absolute poors, 50 poors, I mean the 50% of absolute poors are living in India. So just see the absolute poverty of a country. So children, one thing I have introduced here a word, poverty line. What is a poverty line? So children, in India, the poverty line is used as a standard to measure the number of poor people. In poverty line, a standard is fixed in terms of minimum level of consumption. As I just said, 816 rupees of consumption expenditure in rural areas and 1000 in the urban areas will be, those who are spending that much amount will be considered as below the poverty line. So, absolute poverty refers to a situations when a person fails to reach this minimum consumption level. So, I hope this you understand well. So, children, in the pre-independence India, Dadabhai Nehruji was the first person to discuss the concept of poverty line. He used the jail cost of living expenditure to calculate the poverty line. He used the menu for a prisoner and used appropriate prevailing prices to avail at the cost of consumption expenditure. He assumed that one third of total population consists of children, as he observed basically in jail. There are n number of prisons all being shifted there. Some are the elders, some are the you can say the children. So he has calculated the consumption expenditure by assuming that one third of total population consists of the children, and one half of them, that is one third into 1/2, that is 1/6, consumed very little, while the other half consumed, half of the adult died. So this is the way how they have calculated the jail cost of living expenditure to calculate the poverty line. But after the post-independence India, when the countries achieve independence, then there will be in the several attempts to identify the number of poor in the country. And in 1989, basically, children, an expert group was constituted for the same purpose, to calculate the number of poor in a country. So, children, again, I'm coming back to the same topic, that is, what is the poverty line? So, children, I'm saying that the poverty line is basically a cutoff line on the line of distribution which usually divides the population of a country as poor or non poor. So, the concept of the poverty line is used to measure the extent of poverty in a country. People having income below the poverty line, again I am saying people having income below the poverty line will be considered as non-poor, and people with income above the what I'm going to say, I'm saying that the people having income below the poverty line, people having income below the poverty line are called poor, and the people whose income is just above the poverty line are called as non-poor. So poverty line tries to capture the socially acceptable minimum living standards which the society tries to fulfill. So should now the next question arises: should the poverty line cutoff be determined in the terms of income or in terms of consumption? So, children, the poverty line cutoff may be determined either in terms of income or in terms of consumption. If here you are observing the poverty line, children, this will going to explain you the concept of the poverty. This will be considered as the poverty line. People whose monthly expenditure or the income is below this particular line will be considered as the poor, and those whose income and the monthly expenditure is just above this poverty line will be considered as the non-poor. So here you just see this is just above the poverty line will be known as the non-poor, and all this particular areas which lies below the poverty line, those will be considered as the poor. Now, the question arises, how is the poverty line fixed in India? Children, the determination of the poverty line in India is being used by the monthly, it is used by the monthly per capita expenditure. In short, we can call it MPCE, monthly per capita expenditure. This method is basically used to determine the poverty line, and according to this method, children, the monetary value, that is per capita expenditure of the minimum calories intake, is calculated. Now, what is the minimum calorie intake? Children, the Planning Commission has defined that the poverty line on the basis of the recommended nutrition requirement of 2,435 calories per person per day for the rural areas. Again, I'm saying 2,435 calories per day per person to the rural areas, and 2,125 calories per person per day in urban areas. This will be considered for determining the poverty line. Higher the calories intake has been fixed for the rural areas because of the rural worker has to do a greater physical work as compared to the urban areas. Now, the second is monetary value of minimum calorie intake. So this is again, as just said, the calories, the minimum monthly expenditure is like 816 in the urban areas, and in the rural areas, in the rural areas it is 816, and in urban areas it is 1000 rupees minimum monthly per capita consumption expenditure. So on this basis, children will divide the peoples that who are the poor and the non-poor people. So here also, children, you are observing that 2,435 and 2,045. These are the minimum average calories we've fixed for determining the peoples who are belongs to the urban areas or the rural areas. In the urban areas, as the peoples are doing less physical work, then they need 2045 calories, almost 2100 calories per person per day in urban areas, and that is for 2435 calories per person per day for the rural areas. This will categorize the peoples who are belonging to the poor or the non-poor. Here you just see the trend of poverty in India, children. Here is the number of years you are observing. In the year 1960 to 61, 17 crores of the peoples are the poor people, and which is almost 34% of the country's population. Then the slowly, gradually, year by year, this trend is going to be increased, and the number of the poor is increasing, and their percentage is somehow increases, then decreases, and somehow it again increase in the year 2004 to 5. Then in the year 2009 to 10 it is decreased 29.8, and recently in the year 2011 to 12 almost 21.9 percent of the country's population was living below the poverty line. So this is been supplied towards all the information under the economic survey 2013 to 14, and the planning commission established by the Tendulkar method, the Tendulkar committee. That figures for 2004 to 5, 2009 to 10, 11 to 12 are based on the new poverty line. Now, children, we are going to learn the causes behind understanding why is the reasons behind of the poverty, why the poverty has been increasing very rapidly. So, children, the causes of poverty lies in the institutional and the social factors that mark the life of the poor. The poor are deprived of the quality educations and not able to acquire the skills which enable them to earn the better incomes. Moreover, access to health care is denied to the poor. So, the major victims of the caste reasons and the other discriminatory practices are the various reasons behind the increasing poverty in our country. And some of the important causes of poverty we are explaining here. So now the first it explains the poverty with reference to the underdevelopment of the Indian economy. So children, under the underdevelopment of the India's economy, the principal causes of poverty in India is, the primary causes behind of the poverty is the underdevelopment of the India's economy. Some of the primary factors which support these observations are as follows. First one is the low level of national product. Children, as you all know, the economic the conditions of an country was not very good, owing to the low per capita income. The you can say owing to the low per capita income, the condition of India's economy was considered as a stagnant economy as well as a backward economy. And this already explained you that Indian economy was a backward economy on the eve of independence, and backward economy is one in which the per capita income is very low. So in the year 1947 to 48, the per capita income in India was only 230 rupees. So the bulk of the country's population was very poor without sufficient food, clothing and shelter. Next is the low level of growth. Children, the rate of growth of the economy has been quite low during the 5-year plans in India, and during the you can say the period of planning, the growth rate of GDP has been nearly the 5%. So, but owing to nearly 2% of the growth rate of population, the per capita income grew was 3% only. So, the low growth rate of per capita income has tended to the sustained poverty. Next is the heavy pressures of population. Children, the rapid growth of population, particularly among the poor, is responsible for the problem of poverty in India. And it is obvious that when total national income is thinly spread over a large number of people, the per capita income is bound to be enough low. So, the Indian economy is highly underdeveloped due to the relative backwardness of the agriculture and the industrial sectors as well. And the agriculture in India has continued to be the backward due to the use of the primitive method of production and the fragmented land holdings. So, children, the growth rate of population was 1% in the year 1941 to 51 and 2.1% in 1991 to 2001. So, in terms of its size, we can say that India's population was 84.63 crores in the year 1991 and 121 crores in the year 2011. So, heavy pressure of population adds to dependency burden, implying the greater poverty. So, in you can say within the span of 20 years, like from 1991 to 2011, the population has increased from 84.63 crores to 21 crores in the year 2011. So this is the poverty in the population in the year 1991, but in the year 2011, the population increased from 84.63 to 121 crores. Next is the inflationary spiral. Children, inflation is also owing to we can say the low GDP growth and high growth rate of population. The less developed economies like India are vulnerable to inflationary spiral. It means a situation of persistent rise in prices. Inflation compounds poverty and it erodes the real income of the household as well. So the next, the causes chronic unemployment and you can say unemployment and underemployment. Children, as we all know, a large section of the urban poor in India are largely the overflow of the rural people who migrate from rural to urban areas in search of employment and a livelihood. So industrialization has not been able to absorb all the people, and therefore most of the urban poor are either unemployed or temporarily employed as a casual laborers. So such casual laborers are among the most vulnerable in the society as they have limited skills with no job security, no assets and no surplus to sustain them. So poverty is closely related to the nature of employment. So the you can say the chronic unemployment is also and underdevelopment also is the main causes of poverty in India. India is a country which sustained the chronic unemployment and underemployment. In the year 2011 to 12, the number of unemployed persons in India was around 2.45 crores, and it further increases to 4.35 crores till March 2016. So within the period of 5 years, the total number of unemployed peoples have doubled. Next is lack of capital deficiency. Children, the unequal distribution of income and assets has also led to the persistence of poverty in India, and capital is also one of the principal factors of the economic growth. Because of the lack of capital, there will remains a low level of production capacity, and if the production capacity is low, then there is a low level of you can say the GDP, and it again leads to a high level of poverty. So this is also the principal causes of the poverty. Next is lack of able and efficient entrepreneurs. Children, GDP growth rate needs efficient and the skilled entrepreneurs. Unfortunately, we all know that India is lacking of entrepreneur skills. Consequently, the production activities has failed to gather a momentum, which implies that we have failed to tackle the poverty. Then we have outdated social institutions, the lack of infrastructure. Lack of infrastructure is like you can say the energy, the transport, communications. These are the vital components of the economic infrastructure, as well as the education, health, housing services for the principal components of social welfare. So both these are grossly deficient. Economic and the social infrastructure serves as the foundation of growth and development, but unfortunately this foundation continues to be weak and unstable despite more than 68 years of planning. The slow pace of growth and persistence of poverty are the obvious consequences. Then we have outdated social institutions. The social structure of a country is all of outdated traditions and institutions like the caste system, the joint Hindu system. Such traditions and institutions obstruct the dynamic changes in the economy. So the growth rate is very hampered and the poverty is sustained. Now we are going to learn the measures adopted to remove the poverty. We have already learned what is poverty line, who are poor. Now we are going to learn the measures to remove the poverty in a country. So children, now we are going to learn the measures which is adopted to remove the poverty in a country. Children, as we know that there are several measures adopted to remove the poverty in India, which is placed under the four categories. The first category is combating poverty through the GDP growth, combating poverty by improving the distribution of income through the fiscal and the legislative measures, and the third one is combating poverty through the population control, and at very last we are learning that other measures enhancing the quality of life of the poor. So children, let us start first combating poverty through the GDP growth. Children, GDP growth is an ultimate solution to the problem of poverty. So when the pace of GDP growth is accelerated, the new opportunities of employment are generated, and more and more workers will find employment in farm and factories. So therefore, the greater the employment is, more inclusive would be the growth process, implying lesser poverty. Now, next is combating poverty by improving the distribution of income through the fiscal and the legislative measures. Children, the poverty can be combated by improving the distribution of income through the fiscal and the legislative measures. The first we are going to learn the fiscal measures. Children, the fiscal measures refers to the policy of taxation and the subsidies. It is required because the government places the greater reliance on the progressive tax structure. It implies a higher tax on the richer, and the poor sections are exempted from the tax. This we have already learned in the government objectives. where the first one is reducing the inequalities of income and wealth. So in that basic objective, what the government is doing is the government is trying to impose the heavy taxes on the richer sections, so that by heavy taxes on the richer sections by assuming that the paying capacity of the richer sections are good, and whatever the tax collected will be spent on for the welfare of the poor sections. So children, the tax receipts of the government are used to subsidize the purchase by the poor sections of the society, and subsidy is offered on the necessities of life, including food, education and housing. So, capital grants are offered to the people for construction of their houses, besides grants for the self employment. Now, children, let us learn the second measures adopted. Now, the second one is the legislative measures. Children, legislative measures refers to the minimum wage act, making it mandatory for the employees to offer the stipulated minimum wage to the employees. So, children, legislative measures also include such policies of the price floor for the purchase of the farm outputs. This refers to the stipulated minimum price that must be offered to the farmers for the purchase of their output. And law right, like right to education, is yet another example of legislative measures to enhance the quality of life of the poor segments of the society. I mean, in this measures, what we have to do, we have to make a minimum wages act, so that it makes it mandatory for the employers to offer the stipulated minimum wage to the employees. Now the next one is combating poverty towards the population control. Children, Indian experiences shows that increase in national income fails to be reflected in the quality of a life of the people, owing to a rapid rise in population. So, children, per capita income, national income, which is divided with the population, continues to be low because of the population is rising to neutralize the rise of a national income. So, children, in this measures, the poverty can be removed only by the growth rate of population is moderated, so that the increase in GDP is translated into the increase in per capita GDP. So, control of population would also mean reduction in the size of the labor force, and this will correct the structural imbalances between the labor supply and the capital stock. Now, the last one is the other measures enhancing the quality of the life of the poor. So, in this measures, we are going to learn how would we increase the quality life of the poor. The first one is the development of the agriculture. So, children, Dr. Minhas is of the opinion that the poverty can be removed. Some special effort should be made to develop the agriculture. It is recommended that the agriculture sectors should be mechanized and modernized. Better seeds, means of irrigations, chemical and the composite fertilizer should be used. The small farmers should be given financial assistance. The landless farmers should be given land, and these measures are expected to reduce the poverty at a grassroots level. Now, the sixth one is stability in the price level. Children, the price stability is an essential prerequisite of the poverty alleviations. If prices continues to rise, the standard of living of the poor will continue to deteriorate. So, prices can be stabilized when the production of food grains and the other goods of mass consumption is increased, when goods of mass communications are distributed to the poor through the fair price shops. Next is eradication of unemployment. Children, the special measures should be taken to eradicate the unemployment, underemployment, and disguised unemployment. In this context, children, it is noted that the opportunities of the employment in the rural areas must be fully explored. Cottage industries and the construction activity should be encouraged in the rural areas. Vocationalization of the higher educations should be given a high priority to tackle the unemployment among the educated youth. Next, we are going to learn the measures which is adopted by the government to remove the poverty and unemployment, which we call as poverty alleviation programs. So, children, some of the principal measures adopted by the government under the 5-year plans to remove the poverty is the first Swarna Jayanti Gram Swarojgar Yojana. In short, we call it SYSG. So, children, to remove the poverty from the urban areas and the rural areas, Swarna Jayanti Gram Swarojgar Yojana was launched in the villages in the April 1991. So, children, the Swarna Jayanti Gram Swarojgar Yojana was primarily established to remove the poverty in the rural areas, and it was launched in the villages in April 1999. It replaced the earlier programs like the Integrated Rural Development Program, which we call it IRDP, and training for the youth and training of rural youth or self-employment. So, children, what basically this you can say this program is, children, under this program, a large number of small enterprises were established in the rural areas. The small enterprise were organized as the individual enterprise as well as or as a collective basis of self-help group. So, in the year 2011 to 12, this Swarna Jayanti Gram Swarojgar Yojana was reconstructed as into the NRLM, that is National Rural Livelihood Mission. Next is the same National Rural Livelihood Mission. So, children, this measures is also known as Ajivika. In the first phase, this scheme was implemented in first 150 districts in the year 2012 to 13, and the scheme has expanded to another 150 districts in 2014 to 50, and by the end of 2017 16 to 17, this scheme was extended to whole of the country. So, NRLM is expected to provide self-employment to 90 lakhs peoples. So, this program is now renamed as Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana. Next is Sampurna Gramin Swarojgar Yojana. We call it SGRY. So, children, Sampurna Gramin Swarojgar Yojana was launched on 1st April 2001. Jawahar Gram Samriddhi Yojana, an employment assurance scheme, was integrated into the small Yojana, and the basic objective of this Yojana is first to provide employment opportunities to the surplus workers, to focus on the development of regional economic and the social conditions, to focus on the development of infrastructure, and this Yojana has set up a target of creating 100 crores men days for laborers. It has been subsumed in Manrega. Children, the next one is Pradhan Mantri Gram Swarojgar Yojana. Children, PGY we call it. It was launched in the year 2001. It aims at improving the standard of life of the rural people by developing the 5 important areas like health, primary education, drinking water, housing and roads. It incorporated the 3 projects. The first, Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, which focus was on building all weather roads by 2007 in all villages having the population of 500 peoples or more. Second is Pradhan Mantri Gramin Awas Yojana and Pradhan Mantri Gramin Drinking Water Yojana. Next is Jay Prakash Rojgar Guarantee Yojana. So the scheme seeks to provide guaranteed employment in the most backward districts of the country. And the next is Swarna Jayanti Shehri Rojgar Yojana. So children, this Yojana was launched on the December 1, 1997. Nehru Rojgar Yojana and Pradhan Mantri Integrated Urban Poverty Eradication Program has been merged with this Yojana. So the objective of this Yojana is to provide the self-employment or the wage employment to the urban unemployed or underemployed peoples, which includes the following two programs. The first one is urban self-employment program, urban wage employment program. So children, of the total expenditure of this project, 75% is borne by the central government and the remaining 25% by the state government. Next we have Pradhan Mantri Rozgar Yojana, the development of small and the cottage industries, and the next one is the minimum need program. So children, the Pradhan Mantri Rozgar Yojana, this scheme is for providing employment to educated unemployed persons, which provides loan of up to 1 lakh for opening his own enterprise and 2 lakhs for other activities. Then the development of the small and the cottage industries. Children, several measures have also been taken by the government to develop the small and the cottage industries with a view to removing the poverty and underemployment through the spread of cottage and the small scale industries. This have been set up to remove the poverty in our country. And the very last is the minimum need program. So children, to raise the standard of living of the people, the poor people, minimum need program was launched during the fifth plan. The program covers the primary education, adult education, rural health, rural water supply, rural roads, rural electrification, rural housing, and ecological improvement of the urban slums. So this is expected to improve the quality of the life of the poor sections of the society. Children, in today's video we have learned first what is poverty and who are poor, what is the poverty line, trend of poverty line in India, the number and the percentage of poor. Then we learn the causes of poverty. We have learned the measures how to remove the poverty in India. All these measures we have learned in the 4 basic categories. Like first we have learned combating poverty through the GDP growth. Thereafter we have learned by improving the distribution of income and wealth through the fiscal and the legislative measures. Then we learn the combating poverty through the population control. And finally we learn the measures enhancing the quality of the life of the people. Thereafter we have learned, children, the poverty alleviations program, the measures adopted by the government to remove the poverty. So in that we have learned almost 8 to 9 various types of programs initiated by the government to remove the poverty and unemployment in our country and to raise the condition of poor people and to enhances their quality of life. So children, I hope in today's video you are going to understand all these basic terms of the chapter poverty. And children, if you have any queries left, kindly comment or message. So children, thank you so much for watching and have a nice day, and Sai Ram.